Welcome everyone to the Standing 8 podcast. We are back, episode 77, the first session of 2022. I'm Aaron Sorial from Los Angeles. With me is one of the usual suspects, Mr. Tommy Rush Jr. out in Dallas, Texas, also a founder of BSHQ Barbecue Catering and Delivery. How are you doing today, Tommy?
Man, I'm doing great. I'm doing great as always, man. Uh, Blessed and glad to be here in 2022. Ready to let it do what it do. Let's go.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And also in this episode, the one and only Mr. Courtney Tanner, aka the Burt Brown Sugar. What's up, Mr. Tanner?
Hey, you already know who it is. You already know what it is. It's Courtney Tanner, aka aka Burt Brown Sugar, the one you hate to love, the one you love to hate. Hope everybody had blessed holidays. It's good to be back on with y'all. First episode of the year, and hey, as far as I'm concerned, we can go ahead and dispense with these pleasantries and go ahead and engage in this war of words. Let's talk some shit.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Also, coming in later, hopefully very soon, we're gonna have Mr. Steven Ruiz, who is the founder of Dallas-based boxing media page Ringside Global.
Who
Be
invited
sure.
his hating ass?
Hey, actually, he just popped through. Let me add him
Hey, we
in.
were just talking about you, bro.
What's up, Mr. Steven Ruiz? I was in the middle of introducing you, your movement. So yes, he is from Ringside Global. That's his information scrolling below. His IG is at ringside_global. What is up, Mr. Stephen Ruiz? Welcome back again. Me personally, my first time with you, but I know you've been on with us late last year, this past year. How are you doing today, sir? Any opening words you want to start off with?
Yes, sir. I just want to say thank you so much for having me on the show. It's always a blessing, a privilege, and an honor anytime I be on with, you yourself, Courtney Tanner, Tommy Rush Jr., all men, distinguished boxing, knowledgeable gentlemen. So I'm always proud and humbled anytime I can be on the show or talk boxing. It's always a blessing. I love it all. Just shout out to Derek James Jr. Happy birthday to him. Shout
Yes.
Shout out.
putting us on the map. But again, man, I'm always here. I'm always ready to talk boxing. We'll go 1 round or 12 rounds. I'm all with it.
Loving the energy from all you guys. So yeah, let's get straight to it. First on the agenda is the review of last night's WBC featherweight championship fight between Gary Rusell Jr. and Mark Magsayo on Showtime Championship Boxing. This will be Russell's sixth title defense against the undefeated Filipino contender. Despite the 2-year layoff, Russell was the favorite to keep the status going as one of boxing's long tenured champions. Mcsile entered this fight with momentum from his brutal knockout victory against Julio Ceja last August. The fight started out with Russell using the jab with the intention of landing those clean straight lefts. However, the taller Mcsile used his pressure and reach to score effective combinations. Specifically, Magsayo was able to time his left hooks and uppercuts whenever Russell tried to close the distance. In the fourth round, Russell was severely disadvantaged when he hurt his right shoulder. Magsayo had already put out a higher offensive output at that point in the fight. Russell, nursing his right arm for the rest of the fight, was forced to allocate all of his offense to the straight left hand. Magsayo had a difficult time capitalizing further on Russell's predicament as he was unable to end the fight with the same pressure that he had in the early rounds. Despite Russell's valiant effort scoring with the left hand, evading several of Magsayo's combinations in the remaining rounds, he'd come up short on the judges' scorecards. One judge scored it 114, 114. The other two had it 115 to 113 for Magsayo. Very tight scorecards, guys. Let me start off with you, Mr. Tommy Rush. Give us your recap of the fight.
Man, so First off, I definitely want to say, congratulations to Mcsile. He did pull out that victory midway through the fight. Once Gary Russell Jr. did, clearly injure that shoulder. I said that there was no way that he was he was going to win that fight. I just knew that taking that jab and taking one whole arm away from his arsenal, which he's very very known to control the fight with that jab, was going to be something that was going to be crucial to the fight. As you mentioned, Aaron, I was I was very surprised at how he was able to keep Mcsile at bay, for the pretty much that second half of the fight. I mean, obviously the engagement and interactions, the punch volume was decreased terribly, from Russell Jr. But there wasn't that much pressure being actually put on. It was almost like Mcsale was dumbfounded by the movement, that Russell was showing him. He was being very elusive. He was moving, he was getting his movement from side to side across the ring and controlling that, and pretty much throwing him off his game. As you said, the pressure was on originally in the first few rounds when Russell had two good arms, or two working arms, we'll say, because he did say post fight that he was already injured. He was coming to put on that show anyway as a soldier and a warrior for the fans and for the people. But that whole second round, that whole second half of the fight was, it was predictable, but it was also surprising at the same time because it was way closer than I expected it to be, once Russell injured that shoulder. Um, the one thing that we talked about, in the pound for pound community, shout out to everybody in there when we were in the fight thread, was talking about, I mentioned it to you, Aaron, was he Maxwell should have pulled one of those numbers, one of those Canelo numbers, and been, throwing some looping shots, some hooks or something, and actually punching at that arm, and
Yeah.
taking advantage of that, and maybe even getting in Russell's head a little bit. But it seemed like he was just coming straight forward, and he was punching straight forward as well. He wasn't really doing anything that was going to nullify Russell, moving from side to side. And it was pretty much, as Russell said, he kind of did give him a little bit of a boxing lesson with one arm, and still hung in there in that fight. I did think that Maxwell won that fight. And I could see how some of the scorecards were pretty narrow, but he pulled out the victory, and all props and everything goes to him. But had Gary Russell had two working arms for the whole fight, regardless if it was injured or not, if he would have been able to even throw for like that first or that last 6 rounds, and utilize that right hand at all, I think we would have seen, what I expected to happen, which would have been a unanimous decision for Gary Russell Jr.
Yeah, and more to your point, and I think you mentioned this also. It seems that Mcsile was giving well, giving him too much respect and
Hmm.
being overly cautious because, and that's not really surprising because we know um, we know we know how talented Russell is, so you can't take that away from him. Stefan, let me go to you. Your thoughts on the fight?
Uh, I I actually was. It was a good fight. I was very impressed with Gary Russell Jr. mainly because the reign that he's had is he fights very sparingly, and the fact that he could have that kind of performance with one arm when ring rust is a tremendous deal. You look at guys like Triple G where they have a little bit of time off and then they look a little bit rusty. The fact that Gary Russell Jr. is just used to this time span on his fights and can come in and still, for lack of better words, give a boxing lesson with one arm. It's tremendous because, like everybody says, you kind of wish Maxayo would have came out kind of like a Canelo Smith thing, and it's like, well, that bicep torn up. Now I'm sorry, but I'm about to rip it all the way off. And you didn't have that killer instinct in Maxayo. which then does scare me because while I am excited to see his title reign and how that goes, it's very telling when you have a hurt champion in front of you and you don't go for the jugular. I mean, you don't
Right.
get paid for extra time in boxing. So if I can get you out in one round, I'm going to take you out in one round. And the fact that Gary Rusell made it so apparent and evident right when he threw it and he drops it, and it's very telling. The fact that Freddie Roach, the assistant there, everybody on the side is not telling him like just go for it, because at the end of the day, if you start boxing in a phone booth, the guy's only giving you one back. So if you're throwing with your ones and twos, you're only going to be getting ones back. I'll take that every time. If I can give out 2 for 1, let's go for it and let's see where the chips, let's see where it falls and lands. However, now I do see, if you want to play the devil's advocate, I can see where it's like, well, we're going to win this regardless. But one thing you don't do in boxing is you don't leave it to the judges. And the fact that when they start reading the scorecards, you have a draw. I was shocked because at the end of the day, CompuBox numbers, whether you say they're right, whether you say they're wrong, they had Magsayo just by a landslide on the CompuBox numbers. And the fact that you have one judge that's saying, nope, I see it for Gary Rusell in a draw, it starts to make you a little nervous. And then that's kind of on you when you say, well, we lost by a decision because we didn't go all the way for it. That's what you've trained for. He said it in the beginning. It's always been my dream to do this. When you have your dream right in front of you, man, you'd have to put a lot of people in front of me to stop me from getting what I've been training my whole entire life from. And I see it's inches away. I'm going and I'm getting that. Like Tommy Rush Jr., if there's a McRib out there, he's going to get it. So you can't stop anybody when it's your goal, when that's your destination, or when that's your destiny, you got to go for it. So while I give a lot of credit to Gary Rusell Jr., it does make me a little bit worried for Magsayo. But man, if he can just correct a couple things, he's got the power. He can have a good championship run, considering what's out there. Freddie Roach, obviously, you can't count that guy out, even though he is getting towards the later, towards his training career. Some of those things you wish maybe he gives better instructions in the corner. So we'll see how it goes. But I was actually more impressed with Gary Rusell that he could do that with one arm. It does stink that he kind of waters it down Teofimo Lopez style when you say I won 9 rounds to 3 or 10 to 2. It's like, you went out on a valiant effort, but you don't water it down and start making ridiculous claims. It was a close fight, but to say you went out there and just did all that with one arm and only give the guy 2 rounds, you can't do that either.
Right. And, he's going to get, Magsayo's going to get that criticism as expected that, hey, you were fighting a one-handed fighter. You did not finish the job. You let the fight go in the hands of the judges with close ass scorecards at that. So that's, as you said, it's very telling for Magsayo going forward as he as far as his prospects go. Courtney, let's go to you. I'll give you your rundown of the fight.
Good card last night, man. All three cards. I mean, all 3 fights on that card were. I thought they were very entertaining. Yeah, and that's rare relatively from PBC cards. You usually get the main event is hyped up, and then it's usually 2 undercard fights that are pretty underwhelming. But in all 3 fights, you saw guys give. It was basically it was life or death in all 3 fights. Particularly the co-feature between Matias and Anayan, which had a great result. The main event, though, Gary Rusell Jr. against Mcsile. Hey, you got to give all credit and all props to Mcsile because he took it from the champ in the ring, and on the scorecards, he did what he needed to do, regardless of the fashion that he did it down the stretch. I think that kind of baffled everybody. But ultimately, as Steven was saying, if CompuBox numbers are any indication, we pretty much know who deserved to walk away with a nod on those cards. And I think Gary Rusell, he knew it too. I'll say this though: if you're gonna lose a fight, losing in the fashion that Gary Rusell did. In the interview, was he gracious? No. But was he crying? Was he, saying, was he, did he act the ass like Teofimo Lopez did? No, not at all. And I think he lost his belt, but he walked away with the fans' respect for, not making any excuses for the injury. And there didn't need to be an excuse, as the injury was telling. He threw the shoulder, and then he went down to averaging one jab around for the rest of the fight. So, he shared with the commentary team that he's been dealing with this injury for a while, and that he declined to postpone the fight because he wanted to go in there and entertain the people, man. And if there's a case where somebody probably should have postponed the fight in terms of an injury or their health, it should have been that instance, especially the way the injury presented itself in the fight. But he did what boxers do, he did what warriors do. He went in there, he fought on, and he won that belt in the ring by beating Johnny Gonzalez back in 2015, and he lost to a young hungry lion. And that's boxing, and that's sport, and that's the way of the world. And hopefully we see Gary Rusell Jr. come back. Hopefully he can work his way back to a fight that we've all wanted to see, which is him and Leo Santa Cruz. I think there's going to be a case for Leo Santa Cruz and Mcsile going ahead and unifying. Even though I really, if how Mcsile finished that fight against Gary Rusell Jr., if that's any indication of how things might go, I think that's looking grim if he gets in there with Leo Santa Cruz. Just because we know Leo Santa Cruz is going to definitely match him in size, in height, in reach, and that punch output from Leo Santa Cruz is just fucking crazy. But when Gary, for me, one thing that stood out too is when, obviously when he threw the shoulder, and it was a stark physical reaction from him when that injury occurred. It was basically I shook my head. I said he has no chance to win this fight. And from what I saw, even from jump in the early rounds, is he was having a hard time with Mcsile, because Mcsile went in there, and you can tell he trained towards his strengths. He trained towards his own advantages. So he went in there going to fight with the mind that he was going to fight his fight, not Gary Rusell Jr.'s fight. And Gary Rusell Jr., for being out of the ring 2 years, for having a serious injury, and for him to be able to make those adjustments, for him to have opportunities in that fight, for him to have a chance to be in there, that speaks volumes. I think if it had been any other class of featherweight, been there basically as a wounded animal against a dude who's got popped like Mcsile, it could have been pretty nasty. On the other side of that coin, I think if Gary Rusell Jr. had a jab, I don't even think it would have went to the cards. I think he would have got him out of there late, just because of the lane that he had to connect on Mcsile was just it was straight. And I don't know if that was a stamina issue on Mcsile's part. I don't know if that was Freddie not giving him the direction needed to go to that next level and to make those adjustments for that, or basically just not knowing how to do it because he'd never been there before. But I mean, time will tell, and I think Mcsile's next opponent will tell the story and will tell the tale on that. And then also the prevailing story going into this fight with Gary Rusell Jr.'s dad, who's been his trainer from the beginning. I kind of saw that too, even before the injury, in that he really wasn't getting anything substantial in that corner. They had said that he had pretty much trained himself, along with training his brothers who are fighting in the run up to the fight. His dad obviously is in failing health and had a limb amputated. It seemed like with all that weighing on him coming into that fight, and then his dad not being able to give those instructions in the corner, it just seemed like he was kind of lost as far as what to do as far as formulating a plan B or a contingency, and he was just in there freestyling it and trying to wing it, and he did a good job of that. But ultimately, a guy like Mcsile, young, hungry lion, coming in with that much pop, that much height, that much reach, that much size, that was just that was a bridge too far. in the end for Gary Russell Jr.
Right on, right on. One more follow-up question. Overall, we all knew it was Maxayo's fight. But in that back in that fourth round, right before he even injured his shoulder, did you guys get a sense that things were kind of turning in his favor? That at that point, um, it, he was turning the fight, he was turning the momentum in his favor, because um, at the end of the towards the later rounds, we saw even with one arm that he was kind of catching up with Maxayo's rhythm. Did you guys feel in the fourth round, right moments before he injured his right shoulder, that he felt he was catching Maxayo's rhythm up to that point?
He was
Tommy, did you
losing
guys
those
feel that?
rounds. He was losing those rounds up to that point. I don't think the tide was turning, but I think he was starting to figure things out and get
That's what I
into
was
his.
getting at. Yeah.
But Mcsile came out. He didn't really jump on him per se, but Mcsile, he came in with a clear game plan, knowing what he needed to do to neutralize Gary Russell Jr., and he was hell bent on doing it. And I think that was really hard. I didn't think that necessarily surprised Gary Russell Jr., but I think that was hard for him to deal with. And like I said, it goes back to him not having substantial direction in that corner. I think he kind of, it was probably he was processing within himself. It's like, all right, I'm gonna have to figure this shit out on my own and do it. And then he basically was starting to try different things, and then that's when that injury presented itself.
Yeah, I think like you said, he was losing those first few rounds, and as I mentioned earlier, that's what was surprising about the rest of the fight is because with two working arms, Mcsile was actually he was going to the body shots. He was still pretty much the whole entire fight fighting straight ahead, straight punches, one twos straight in front of him, but it was almost like because of the styles make fights, right? It was almost because Gary Russell still had his jab, he was still staying in front of him and battling it out with him, and that wasn't favoring him that much. But as we came up to the end to that injury occurring, he was getting that timing down. He was starting to beat him to the punch with connecting with that jab pretty cleanly, and before Maxayo would get off on him. So I mean, yeah, that was one thing that I did notice as well. And like I said, that's why I figured if he did have those two working arms, it would have been late rounds. It would have been some trouble because he would have been pretty much controlling it, and would have been able to be even more in his head, than he was with the one arm.
Just to follow up there, I agree completely with Mr. Courtney Tanner and Mr. Tommy Rush. But I think that's also the risk you play when you're a veteran boxer, much like you see Gary Russell. Because I'm watching the fight without sound and I'm scoring. I'm saying Maxayo 1, Maxayo 2, Maxayo 3, and then you get into the fourth where you're saying, okay, well, this is now where the champion Gary Russell makes his adjustments. He kind of figured you out, let you do what you were gonna do, and now he's gonna neutralize and come on. But the risk that you run with that is an injury, that you get caught with something
Mhm.
that I like, but Canelo does because he's a veteran in the game, where he'll let Billy Joe Saunders, Amir Khan, even for that matter, Kovalev, come in, win early rounds, and then it's like, okay, I saw what you did. Now it's my turn. But you got to be very careful because by the time you make it your turn, if you're too far down in the scorecards, now you're really needing to score something big and heavy and in the later rounds. And I don't like boxers playing catch up. Just like you see Tank Davis when Floyd's saying, hey, you're losing this fight. It's a fight that he should win, but you're letting your opponent kind of stay in there. And when you watch football, baseball, whatever it is that you watch, the longer somebody hangs around, the bigger the risk for an upset. And that's what happens in boxing. So the fact that Gary Russell, like I said, maybe he's not getting blasted away by Maxayo in round 1, 2, or 3, and then says, okay, I saw what you did. You're kind of coming straight forward like a young bull, like a young lion does. But now it's my turn to kind of show you where experience can take over. and now you're ready to do that, and now your shoulder's out, and now you're working with one arm. Well, now the young lion's still coming with fastball straight down the middle, and you kind of have nothing to answer back. So I like it because you can let a young guy kind of punch himself out or even get frustrated in the later rounds, but you've got to make sure that you've got a healthy left and right to be, and the stamina to be able to say, okay, now it's my turn, young buck. Now let's see what you got when I come with my ring IQ and the ring generalship to counter you. And the fact is that he was doing really good with that with even one arm. So the fact that he didn't have two, it's a very telling. I don't see Magsayo wanting that rematch. I wouldn't do that if I was them. But I mean, if I was Gary Rusell and you really do feel like, no, I can beat that guy with two arms, you go for it. But it's just, you got to be careful. It's a risky play when you let that young guy go a couple rounds and put a couple in the bank. Nothing's ever promised. So that's, just to kind of follow up with Mr. Courtney Tanner and Tommy Rush. I agree with it, but that's the risk you run when you think you're going to take it late and let your experience take over.
Hey, one thing I do want to say, like, I know that it may have been a little bit too much, and it could have also been a little seasoned with the, you gotta really beat the champ. But shout out to the judges for respecting defense. I think that there's way too many judges and pundits and casuals as well,
That score
that
blood. Yeah.
yeah, that it's like the blood and guts. We got to see that, we got to see that in order for there to be some respect put on things. And the fact that Gary Rusell was doing what he was doing, and controlling that in the ring and being as elusive as he was actually getting some credit for that shit. So, I respect that, at least, that the judges was putting some respect on that defense, because, that's something that I like and I look at a lot as well, when I'm looking or scoring fights myself. So I can respect that they put some value into that.
But interesting that Steven said that he thinks Magsayo is going to give him the rematch. I think Gary Rusell Jr. knows he's not going to get the rematch. From that the way that post fight interview went, and that's the name of the game. A lot of these guys, they don't write a rematch clause if they're in the contract that they're fighting a mandatory, because it's kind of like I think Gary Rusell Jr. got into that mentality where he's been fighting once a year against his mandatories, and then basically schooling all of them. I think he didn't think ahead, with all the intangibles that could present itself or whatnot. And he just came in there thinking, hey, it's another mandatory. I've been here before. I'm gonna get this guy out, and then we're gonna march ahead towards the Leo Santa Cruz unification and get that pay-per-view money or whatnot. But yeah, now that the floor has dropped out from the bottom, I seriously doubt Mcsile is gonna grab that rematch. I think if we have any indication of how Al Heyman moves, Al Heyman is going to immediately move to feed Mcsile to Leo Santa Cruz. And I wouldn't be surprised is if Kiko Martinez, the IBF featherweight champion, who Gary Rusell Jr. already beat very handily, but who scored an upset over Kid Galad to pick up the IBF version of the belt. I wouldn't be surprised if he is paid very handsomely to come back over to the States and do a rematch that nobody wants to see with Gary Rusell Jr., but with the intention of getting Gary Rusell Jr. a belt, and so that Leo Santa Cruz matchup could possibly be salvaged again. And I think a lot of us would want to see the Gary Rusell Jr. Leo Santa Cruz. I think a lot of us want to see those two get in there, even if there weren't any belts on the line. But because of the way the business is matched up and how these guys respond to each other as far as their willingness to fight one another, it's pretty much a situation where these dudes aren't going to go in with each other unless they have an opportunity to pick up another belt. A lot of people are saying all these belts don't mean shit. Well, to these guys who are fighting, these belts are still relevant because these belts mean everything. So, but yeah, I mean, look for that move to be next on the Al Heyman chessboard. I mean, I mean, could it go another direction? Certainly. But if it does, remember I said it.
Great stuff all around. So next topic in the agenda, very spicy topic. It's the it's the lawsuit between by imposed by Terence Crawford versus Top Rank. As we all know, the top pound for pound star, reigning WBO welterweight championship champion Terence Crawford, he filed a lawsuit earlier this month against his former promoter, Top Rank Promotions, accusing the company of racial bias when it came to promoting his fights. The suit is seeking damages in excess of $5.4 million. In the suit, Crawford claims that Top Rank limited his earnings potential by failing to secure big name fights, i.e., Errol Spence, across promotional lines. In addition, Crawford has accused Bob Arum of minimizing his appeal as a future free agent by making public disparaging remarks, such as, and I quote, I could build a house in Beverly Hills on the money I lost on him, unquote. Crawford certainly isn't the first fighter to leave Top Rank on a sour note. Other high profile names such as Manny Pacquiao, Mikey Garcia, Floyd Mayweather have had their own friction with Bob Arum. However, as for Crawford, does Crawford's lawsuit hold any merit to any degree, or is Crawford simply not a pay per view attraction, and Top Rank did the best they could in elevating his brand name as tangibly as possible? Tommy, let's get your take on this, man. Um, what's up?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start first because as Steven had on his Instagram story, round two fight is going to be going down. We're going to continue this one. Um, so one, I will say I don't really feel that the lawsuit is gonna really go anywhere. As far as in reality, um, just get that out of the way and just say that. But have I personally felt that he wasn't marketed as he could have been, especially compared to someone like, say, for example, when we seen the instant rise and push of Lomachenko, um, during the time where Crawford was, he was and should have been, the top dog in that stable. There was, in my opinion, there was a lot of difference when it came down to how much we saw getting marketed. Just how things were pushed out there. Some of the narratives that were being placed out there. In some of the stories, some of the just everything that we saw when it came down to the difference between the two when it was their time to fight. I did see a little bit of a difference myself, but you know as you mentioned, Aaron, there's been other people that have left. One very very big one was Floyd Mayweather, and we all know that that's a very well known story behind that. The one thing that everybody has already said once before, and I'll say it again, is this if this were the case, this was something that you know in my opinion, he saw and would have seen before he even re-signed with Top Rank. So I think that at this point, it's kind of sour grapes on both sides, which is unfortunate because now we get to kind of have this drama. But Aram has said things that he probably shouldn't have said. And at this point, Bud Crawford has said things that he probably shouldn't have said as well. And so now we have this feud as he finally gets free, from his contract, and now he's ready to go to war as far as with legalities and things like that. But I don't, in my opinion, I really don't see it, going and blowing up any damn thing. To be honest, I think that it's almost like he wants to now say his piece and stand up for himself or voice himself after being pretty much handcuffed by his contract for so long, which part of that was his doing when he re-signed. So that's my thoughts on it, to be honest.
Oh, I share similar thoughts. I think Crawford is more trying to send out a message as opposed to just simply winning a lawsuit. Um, Stefan, let's get your thoughts on this. Give us your breakdown of this situation.
It's pretty simple. Do I think Bob Arum is a saint? No. I think. Do I think he's racist or has racial bias, as the lawsuit claims? No. I think he has shown that he is an old man that just cares about one thing, and that is one color, and that happens to be green. And when you are putting a lot of money in a talent and getting nothing back, that's going to make you upset. But does that make you racist? No. Aaron, Courtney, Tommy Rush, all of us are not going to our jobs every single day, putting gas in our cars, changing our oil, and buying new clothes for work just to get less money when we leave there on our paycheck. And essentially, that's what Bob Arum was pissed off about. Hey, I'm buying new work clothes. I'm putting gas in my car to go to work every day. I'm doing all these different things. And at the end of the day, my paycheck shows less than what I'm putting in. Should he have said I could have bought a house in Malibu as the promoter? No, you don't do that. But Bob Arum is close to 90 years old. What does he care? He's at the end of his career as well. He doesn't have to do the whole Eddie Hearn and play nice with everybody. He's established. He'll be in the Boxing Hall of Fame himself, working with Ali. I don't understand how you could be one of the pioneers working with Muhammad Ali and things like this, and then all of a sudden now somebody like Bud Crawford could say, well, he's racist. Well, he wasn't racist back then. And how is he racist now? If he is racist, why did you resign? If he is racist, why did you let Maurice Hooker or Shakur Stevens, who are like little bros to you, jump in the clubhouse too? Wouldn't you have said, hey, Tommy Rush is my boy. Courtney's my boy. Hey, I'm not going to let you do business with this guy. This guy's whack. He's going to do you real wrong. Instead, they joined the team. They're all putting on shows on Top Rank. If it was that bad, you don't let your little brothers jump in there and do the same business. So at the end of the day, I think, like Tommy Rush said, it's not going to go anywhere. You're wasting money on lawyers. It's just hard to show. When I posted something on my own site where Bud Crawford's earnings, the last 4 or 5 fights, total Lomachenko's money. So does Lomachenko now have a case against Bob Arum too, to say he doesn't like Ukrainians? No, it is what it is. Bud Crawford at his age has never been a pay-per-view star. You're not selling out Nebraska, Omaha. It sucks that you're not from a Philly, a Vegas, a Texas. You're not from a big fighting town. It is what it is. You haven't, your pay-per-view numbers have never been there. When they asked Bud Crawford on a DAZN telecast, when I think it was Virgil was fighting Maurice Hooker, he asked him, well, what's going on? Chris Mannix asked him, so what's going on with the Errol Spence fight? He says, oh, that's dead. So he himself said it was dead. Then Mannix says, well, what about Virgil Ortiz? Well, he's too green. Okay, so who are you trying to fight? You trying to fight veterans in the game where it could be pay-per-view matchups? You trying to fight young, hungry lions that could come up and make a big pay-per-view splash itself? You didn't want the old or the new. So it's very tough to say that guy's the reason that I'm not making a lot of money, when even with Sean Porter this last fight, you weren't showing up to interviews. They did a Sean Porter virtual presser, and he didn't show up. So you're mad at Bob Arum, and you're not doing your part. You know what I mean? It's tough to say, when Aaron's out there offering overtime to make more money, and I'm asking you, I need more money, I need more hours, and then Aaron says, hey, Steven, you can come work after your shift a little bit of time and put some overtime OT hours in. No, I can't do that. Well, I thought you just said you needed money. So, you got to show up to these pressers. Hey, Bud, you said, I'm not making you a star, but you ain't even doing your part. Damn, push the guy, do something at the weigh-in. Then Bud says, I'm not that type of guy. I'll tell you in the back room quietly to myself, right? He says all this. Then this dumbass is in the ocean talking about Errol Spence. Where are you at? So now you're making all kinds of noise when you just said you were that quiet gangster that'll pull you in the back room and tell you I'm going to fuck you up. And now you're in the ocean showing a whole ass of yourself, talking about Errol, where you at? Come on now. Then if you want to make a statement and say, Bob Arum, you cost me a lot of money, okay, do that. But do this. If I'm Bud's lawyer, I say, let's do this. Let's do 3 fights after your top rank contract and show that you could have made 60 million as opposed to the 21. Now I have a case to say, look, Bob Arum, we did it after you did with a much older Bud Crawford with different people, and we made 60 million versus your 25 or 21, whatever it was. Now I have a claim. But to say that right after, and you're not in negotiations really to fight with anybody, it's a little tough to prove that there's racial bias and things like that. When you have Dog Bay, you have Shakur Steven, you have Hooker, you have all these guys that Tommy Rush even mentioned. Oh, I saw a push with Lomachenko, a different push that he had over Bud. But what does that matter when at the end of the day, the dollars showed that Bud made more than Lomachenko? So, that's almost a win for Al to say, yeah, I promoted the hell out of Lomachenko, but I still gave Terence Crawford more money than him. So at the end of the day, to me, when you're just looking at the straight up facts, it's a little tough to prove. Can I say that, Bud doesn't have a claim? No, you can't say that he doesn't have no claims whatsoever. But when you just start unveiling all the facts, it's a tough uphill battle, especially when you don't have a telecast at Top Rank where it's just all white fighters. It's hard to do.
Great stuff, Steven. And Corny, let's go to you. And you alluded to Bob Arum being tone deaf, as you said, and it kind of coincides with what the points that Steven has made. Corny, give us your take on this.
All right. Hey, Steven, first off, is your name pronounced Steven or Stefan?
Well, it's Steven, but I've been called a lot worse, so it's not a big deal.
No, my pet peeve is when people misspell my name. So I try my best to pronounce people's names correctly. So, because I'm about to rip your head off. So first, I'm fucking with you, man. No, but okay. First off, because I respect Bob Arum so much, I'm gonna correct you on one of the things you said. Bob Arum made the Hall of Fame about 20 years ago, so he's already there. Secondly, another inconsistency I heard is when you brought up Maurice Hooker and Jamel Herring, who are in close association with Bud Crawford. Maurice Hooker is still signed to with Eddie Hearn in Matchroom. He went over and fought a top-ranked fighter because that's how it panned out with the purse bid. And then hold on, I didn't interrupt you when you spoke. And secondly, Jamel Herring didn't start training at Crawford's gym in Nebraska until he jumped ship from PBC over to Top Rank. So, but okay, I'll say this though. I think a lot of people have been anticipating this big clash of opinions, and and us going at it on the air. I don't feel like doing that. And what I'm saying? And the thing is, because I've never wanted to turn this platform into TMZ, even though I think a lot of people are entertained a lot more when we disagree than when we agree. But I also know I'm in tune with enough of our viewers to know that a lot of them are thinking right now, with all that's going on in boxing, why the fuck are we going? Why the fuck is this a topic of discussion on our show? I agree with you, but this is a democracy, and so this is not my show. This is a show. This is a show of us four who originated the show. So because I'm on it, I am going to indulge this. But I'll say it like this. I do not think Bob Arum is a racist. I don't think he operates with racist overtones. I've met Bob Arum personally. He shook my hand and he asked me to call him by his first name. So I've met legitimate bigots and racists, and a bigot or a racist will not act like that, or they will not approach you the way that Bob Arum acted towards me when I approached him. So awesome. I'm gonna get that off the table. I'm gonna get that off the table right now. I don't think Bob Arum is racist. And honestly, I think Terence Crawford has gotten bad advice as far as pursuing this as a lawsuit. I think his time and energy should and need to be directed towards things that are going to advance his career further. And I don't think this is it. But the thing is too is I see a lot of people jumping on Bud Crawford, and they didn't keep that same energy when Mikey Garcia had beef with Bob Arum. They didn't keep that same energy when Oscar De La Hoya had had disputes with Bob Arum. Um, and I think the whole notion that Crawford is just this guy who's been grossly overpaid his whole career, I think that's bullshit. Terence Crawford opened up a whole new market in the Midwest for boxing. This dude, you know what I'm saying? And this dude, so yeah, he's from there, and there's not a lot going on other than college football in Omaha or Lincoln, Nebraska. But I've been to Oakland where they were moving people up from the cheap seats when Andre Ward was fighting because they want to make it look like he had more people there than there actually were. So there's a lot of fighters that can't even sell out their hometowns, and they get the amount of exposure and the push from their promoters that Terence Crawford is claiming he didn't get from Bob Arum. But I think this whole notion with today's black athlete in that, oh, you're getting paid well, so you should basically shut the fuck up. I think that's dangerous. And I think, and it goes back to like Colin Kaepernick, and where people thought because he was a millionaire athlete, he had no room or no place to seek to redress issues that are going on in wider society, or seek to redress the issue of racism in broader society. And Terence Crawford is not doing that. It's about him, and race factors into it. But at the same time, I don't think the lawsuit has merit or it should have merit, but I get it. I understand it. Just because your employer is paying you well does not mean you have to let their disrespect towards you and of you slide. Yes, we all got day jobs. We all work for people, or have in the past, or to some extent, or whatever. You're not going to let somebody spit on your shoe and not apologize to it just because you're making $30 an hour. I mean, say, come on, let's be real. And okay, the angle is brought up that he's made, in his total earnings with his contract with Top Rank, he has made more than Lomachenko. I'll say this though, as far as he's looking at this from earnings potential. I think if we say, is there no way he could have made more money? I think you're being extremely short-sighted and naive. Also, you have to consider the fact that Lomachenko is in a smaller weight division. The higher up the scales you go, the more your earnings potential. And that's mainstream. That's mainstream boxing fans, and the casuals is they are more apt to tune in to see bigger guys up the scale fight than the smaller guys. And Lomachenko's numbers have been good, and that's largely due to the Top Rank, the ESPN push, which Terence Crawford has benefited from. But I think all in all, it doesn't come down to racism. It doesn't come down to the level of disrespect that Crawford has internalized. I think what Bob Arum's major crime in promoting Terence Crawford has been is that he didn't see his potential when he saw him. I think originally Bob, and actually the story is out there. Bob Arum only signed Terence Crawford because Timothy Bradley came to him and said, "This dude whooped my ass in sparring. This kid's going to be special." I think Bob Arum went ahead and signed him and put him on a few undercards, thinking he was just going to be a durable fighter. He was going to be a guy who was going to be able to entertain people as a fill-in on some of the undercards. I don't think Bob Arum first saw Terence Crawford going over to Scotland and beating Ricky Burns' ass. I think and Bob Arum even said that fight against Gamboa, he agreed to do that fight in Omaha, Nebraska, upon Terence Crawford's request because it was a concession. He said, it didn't look like, I pretty much didn't have much confidence he would be able to beat Gamboa. So it might as well let him have home field advantage or home ring advantage or however you want to call it. And so, the thing is when you sign somebody or you associate with somebody and they keep surpassing your very limited expectations, I think it catches you off guard. And then when Terence Crawford did have a large measure of success, um, because Bob Arum is always thinking about he's always focused on marketing to demographics. And he said before that he sees the African American audience as a shrinking demographic within their viewership of boxing. And to an extent, he's right, but I don't think it's to the extent that he thinks it is. And so when Terence Crawford started exceeding some of these expectations he had, I think he put him out there and said, you know, we can get a lot of eyes on this guy from the Midwest. We can get a lot of guys eyes on this guy from with African American fans in the inner cities. And for the most part, he did. But again, when Terence Crawford moves up to the welterweight division, and the guy that everybody has eyes on, when him coming in, is Errol Spence Jr. So with that, and then with basically with there being no potential to match those two and answer the question, yeah, Crawford was always going to believe that he was in the back seat. But I'll say this too: Terence Crawford re-signed with Top Rank under the premise that he was going to get a fight against Manny Pacquiao. That obviously didn't materialize because Manny Pacquiao didn't want that smoke. He jumped the PBC. And then, I think Bob Arum was kind of stringing Crawford along with the possibility of him being able to cross the street and get a fight against Errol Spence or get in a fight with one of the top guys on PBC. And that didn't happen. But then, Bob Arum signs Tyson Fury, and he makes a fight between him and PBC's most marketable dude, Deontay Wilder. And I'm thinking Terence Crawford looks at that and it's like, well, you were able to cross the street with Tyson Fury. Why couldn't you do that with me? And now there was other extra temporary things going on with that, to whereby Tyson Fury and Wilder were able to fight 3 times, and it was a cross-promotional, cross-network deal. But I mean, I think it was. I think Terence Crawford saw all that, and then in the end, when it's a situation where Bob Arum knows that Terence Crawford isn't going to look to re-sign with them, he's not going to be able to offer him enough money in relation to what's out there for him on PBC or with Matchroom or whatever. He basically, and it also a thought is like, well, it's a relief thing now. It's like, I don't have to be burdened by trying to find this dude an opponent because he's no longer under contract. Then Bob Arum starts running his mouth and saying a lot of superfluous shit. And does Crawford look silly to an extent by beefing with a 90-year-old Jewish dude? Yes. I mean, if you were really that gangster as you say you are, yeah, you do look silly. But I mean, the thing is, I think a lot of people are putting the weight or the extra weight on Terence Crawford's shoulder in the beef, when really, I think if you look at it objectively, it's more down the middle. And there's things that Bob Arum could have definitely done better and made himself and Terence Crawford some more money if he played it differently and he'd gotten out of his own way. But also, ultimately, with Terence Crawford, like I said at the beginning of this, I think his efforts and his time and his energy are going to be best devoted elsewhere, in the ring and in training and in the boardroom, securing a better deal and getting bigger fights rather than in a courtroom. So.
Go ahead, Stephen. Yeah, you had something to add?
Yeah, so a big thing, first and foremost, is Courtney, respect to him, but he contradicts himself. He says, well, the casuals see as the higher weight classes go, that's where the more money's made. So then he throws out the Wilder and Fury. Well, those are heavyweights, and we haven't had heavyweights like this in a long time. So when the fact that you can make hundreds of millions on 2 mega heavyweights, one guy that's knocking everybody out, and a guy that's showing up to his interviews, calling everybody Dosser and doing everything to press, you're talking about two different, way too different lanes, where Wilder and Fury are pay-per-view stars. Their numbers show it. Bud Crawford, you're staying quiet. You're not saying anything. So first and foremost, that kind of contradicts itself when the casuals are only showing as the higher weight classes go, and then the 2 megastars you have are Wilder and Fury going at it. Well, that's not Spence. He's not all out there like that, and that's not Crawford. So that's hard to say. Well, how could you do it with these guys, but you can't do it with me? Well, y'all. So that's the first and foremost. The other thing too is he has a problem, not Courtney, but Bud Crawford has an issue with, the what if. You can't do what if. In business, nobody goes to their job and says, well, what if you put me in this spot? Well, your work dictated that I couldn't put you in that spot. So I can't give you a promotion or I can't give you more money when you're not even showing me you're worth the 17, 18, 19, $20 an hour you are that you're getting paid now. Why am I going to give you $30? Well, what if I get better? Well, you're not. And the numbers show it. Your 130,000 pay-per-view numbers against Shawn Porter, that's not showing it. So you can't tell me you deserve $30 an hour when you're not showing me you deserve $20 an hour. That's an issue. Dollars and cents, that's a businessman. Courtney says that Bud looks weak going against a 90-year-old Jewish guy. The last time I checked, for me, gangsters wear suits. It's not always the guys that are young, with all the muscles. Some of the most gangster people in the world are 90 plus wearing suits. The Rockefellers or the Soros. You're talking about gangsters. Those are gangsters. So that also kind of doesn't make any sense when he says that, which is okay, but I get what he was saying. So at the end of the day, like I said, it's tough. We don't have to go back and forth because we all agree. Courtney admitted it. Tommy Rush admitted it. I don't know. I hadn't heard you, Mr. Aaron, but we all say Bob Arum's not a racist. Lawsuit over. We're just looking at it for what it is. Now, Courtney says also about the black athlete, about the shut up and dribble kind of thing, where that could be a racial undertone. I get that. But if you are, I will not be disrespected regardless. So if somebody says, well, Steven, we'll give you $1 to come to FedEx tomorrow, and I'm going to keep disrespecting you. You could keep your dollar and shove it up wherever. I'm not going to re-sign. So just like he brought up Mikey, just like he brought up Floyd, all those guys bet on themselves. And did it hurt them for a little while? Sure. Mikey didn't fight for a couple, an extended time. Floyd bet on himself and bought himself out. Oscar started his own promotion company with Bernard Hopkins. So if you're saying, oh, woe is me, do something about it. Don't sit there and a year after you get out now say, well, now I'm going to sue your ass. No, get out, make your own mark on the sport and keep it moving. Show somebody the best revenge is success. I don't want to hear all this. Well, you're disrespecting me and it's a shut up and dribble movement when you're staying and then you shut up and you dribble. That's a problem. Just go out there, say, I'm Bud Crawford. I bet on myself, and I'm going to make 3 more fights after I re-signed, and I'm going to show this Bob Arum that I could have made 60 million my next 3 fights as opposed to the 21 million I made with you. Have a claim, but to do what he's doing, also the what if to say, that's potential earnings. Then why did you take the B side to Amir Khan? Amir Khan made $7 million and you took 4. You done fuck. So don't tell me about this what if earnings when you're taking 7, you're letting Amir Khan take the lion's share and you're going to take 4. Then shut up and show up. Then you're going to tell Errol Spence, who did bigger numbers than you by over 100,000 to Shawn Porter, no, I'm not taking 50-50 or 60-40. You did that with Amir Khan. So how are you going to say that Errol Spence don't deserve that? Do I think Bud Crawford could beat Errol Spence? Absolutely. I think Bud Crawford right now beats Errol Spence. But when you're talking about the money side before you even get there, the first fight, which is negotiations, you're losing that one all day, every day, and twice on Sunday. So there's just so many things that Bud contradicts himself. That's the problem I have. Even to say I'm DFW, sure. I like Spence. I love him. Before the accident, I take Spence. But after that, I'm not sure. What I've seen in Bud, I like. But this whole outside the he's a mess. Bomac is not really helping him with that. They said they're going to have last year he ends up only having 1. So it's a big old problem. You can't say what if earnings and then you let Amir Khan take $7 and you take $4 million. You look like a clown.
Are you done?
Hey, I'm here.
Or is you finished? No, I'll say this. Okay, you went way beyond the pale by saying that or insinuating that I didn't think Bob Arum is gangster or whatever. That's kind of hold on. That's stupid. Bob Arum doesn't need to be gangster. My point with that is that Bob Arum though is 90 years old. My thing is I was raised to respect my elders. I'm sure Terence Crawford was too. So the thing is, I think a lot of the people who know and associate me, they're gonna be perplexed if I'm going back and forth on the cameras or on social media or whatever by a dude who, is like 60 years older than me. So, so that's what I'm saying. Bob Arum, he can be gangster all he's want, or he can be softer than diaper shit. It doesn't matter. You know what I'm saying? That's the only thing I meant about that. And then also, you said I'm contradicting myself where I used, where I said or pointed out that the paydays are bigger as you go up the scale in relation to him and Lomachenko, and then raise the issue of Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder. How am I contradicting myself when basically you made the point, you solidified the point that I said is that and basically, and that's all, and all I'm saying is as far as, well, he made more money or slightly more money than Lomachenko, so he has no cause to or no grievance or whatever. No, I'm just saying it's a given. He made a little bit more money than Lomachenko because he's a little further up at the pay scale, and obviously Tyson Fury made a shitload more money than he did. And then also with the pay-per-view numbers, let's be real, Steven. Let's be real though. There's nobody else in the game right now besides Canelo Alvarez who is doing, more than 500,000 or up to 1 million, out the gate on the pay-per-view sales. Errol Spence, for all the hype of this fight with Mikey Garcia and against Danny Garcia, if you look at those numbers, they're pretty comparable to Terence Crawford's. If we're really going to examine those numbers, I'm not saying that Terence Crawford did the same wrong, but if you look at it, if we're going to scrutinize those numbers, he didn't do that much better than Terence Crawford. You know what I'm saying? And that's the thing with all these and with the stature, that's the culture right now with the pay-per-view model though, is that, all these guys who are fighting on pay-per-view, they have shabby numbers because there's too many pay-per-views and there's too many avenues in order to illegally view pay-per-view or stream it. And that's simply a sign of the times. So to use that against him, I think that's looking at one very narrow view or slice of that, and then disregarding a whole lot of other shit. When we think about that. So
okay. So I was only clarifying. You said, what does he look like, the old Bob Arum? That's the only thing I clarified. Just clarify. It's okay. The second thing was, the only reason I'm bringing those the heavyweights up is because you said, how come Bud Crawford said, well, how come you can do it with them, but you can't do it with me? Those are way different guys. You know what I mean? So that's why I said it like that. So that's just all I was again was just clarifying, because you can see Bud Crawford, you're not a heavyweight and you don't bring to the table what those guys bring to the table. So I was just clarifying that. The second thing is, at the end of the day, we could take Bud Crawford's best numbers and they're still not what top guys are doing when it comes to pay-per-view numbers. I mean, like you mentioned, and that's okay. I totally get it too. The way pay-per-view is going now, anybody can stream a fight, but the same people could have streamed the Errol Spence Sean Porter fight are the same people that could have streamed the Bud Crawford and Sean Porter fight, and it's 100,000 less. So that's a problem. I mean, I get it. Yeah, the pay-per-view numbers are not what they used to be in the 90s and the early 2000s, but the same people can stream it, and you have different numbers every time, where Errol Spence is a little bit, if you want to say a little bit better than Bud Crawford. So that's where I would say you got to be careful what you say when you mention that, well, people are streaming it. Well, people are not just streaming Bud Crawford and nobody else, and that's why Bud Crawford is continuously less. I don't see Bud Crawford doing big numbers at AT&T Stadium with a Mikey Garcia either. So it's tough because you're kind of comparing apples and oranges, especially when I've seen Crawford's apples and they don't look good. So it's tough, but at the end of the day, again, I could see Bud Crawford. People confuse talent with star power. You could be an Andre Ward, talented beyond belief, doesn't mean you're a pay-per-view star, and that's just what it is. Jake Paul, shit boxer, made $30 million this last year. So at the end of the day, talent doesn't translate to money. So that's a big blow to Bud Crawford because they're gonna say, look, this Jake Paul, he can't box for shit, but he can sell like a motherfucker, and you cannot. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. It sucks, but that Bud Crawford lawsuit and what at the end of the day, what we're talking about is Bob racist? No. Did he cut Bud's earnings? No. Because a guy that's like Jake Paul, who can't box for shit, is still making $30 million in 1 year. So it kind of just wraps that up, body bags it any which way you slice it. So that's just tough to do.
I get what you're saying as far as that, with Tyson Fury and Wilder. All I'm saying and meaning to clarify on that is that he was able to cross the street and secure that fight.
Because
You know what I'm saying? So, hey, but you know what I'm saying? Hey, but okay, yeah, but the thing is, I would argue is there was actually more before Wilder and Fury met up for that first time. It's pretty arguable there was more demand for Crawford and Errol Spence to cross the street, to cross sections and get in with each other than it was for Fury and Wilder. Now, the Fury and Wilder with that rivalry, that demand that increased as you know, what I'm saying, as they did it a second time and the third time. But initially, it's what I'm saying. I think the question begs to be asked. And what I'm saying, he said, hey, money's all money is always a factor. But I mean, the fact that remains though is if they're for that first fight for Tyson Fury and Wilder, if the money was there in order for them to smash walls, then with that, as many people who were shouting and for that fight at the onset, as soon as Terence Crawford entered the 147 division, hey, there was demand there. There was money. There was money there. There was money there to smash that wall too. Also, I want to touch on another thing. You pointed out the purse slip between Terence Crawford and Amir Khan, where Amir Khan took 7 and Terence Crawford took 4. You got to think about where Amir Khan was coming from the table. That dude is, he'd been on pay-per-view as far as in big fights against Canelo Alvarez. He had already, and he had a bigger global audience. Per se, when you think about the U.S., you think with the Middle Eastern demographic, you think about the UK, and then you also got to think about Amir Khan is he's bringing India and Pakistan with him, which is like 2 billion people. So I mean, I think it was one of the situations too where I think Crawford needed an opponent, and I think he was willing to make that concession. Is like, all right, as long as I'm getting my guaranteed cut, which is $3 million. You said he made 4, so he made a little bit of extra or whatever. But it's like, okay, as long as I'm making my guaranteed money and I'm getting a little more or whatever, hey, I'm not worried about what you're making. Now, in terms of the conversation between Crawford and Errol Spence, where he wants to define split or whatever, yeah, that is a weak point. From that, because it's like, okay, you didn't worry about what it was in Amir Khan's pockets, but now you're worried about what it's in Errol Spence's. So, hey, I'll go ahead and I'll make that concession right there as well. So
I agree with you 100%, and this is where I reeling you in. It's because, like you, 1,000%, the demand is there. So I agree with you that the Spence Bud Crawford demand is going to be higher than a Wilder Fury at that point in time. But what the thing is Wilder and Fury went ahead and smashed that wall. Bud doesn't do that. At the end of the day, any way you slice it, Bud is not that guy to talk that fight up. So all he had to do was punch through that wall. He chose not to. And
But people still want to see it.
well, who? Hardcore boxing fans. Aaron,
People still want to see it.
Steven. That's four motherfuckers. That's not hundreds of thousands of people like the Fury and Wilder. Wilder flew his ass to England yelling bomb squad in Fury's face. I don't even think Bud Crawford would pay a Spirit Airlines flight to come from Omaha to Dallas to say, you know, Omaha, Omaha, get your cheap ass on the fucking flight and make this fight happen. Make more than Courtney, Aaron, and Tommy want to see this fight. Break down the wall and let's make it a trilogy. You beat this Spence. Cool. He's going to want his back. That's a second fight. So you went from 10 million to 20 million to 30 million. Do it. Help yourself. That's all I'm saying. So to your point, I 100% agree with you. All you have to do is that demand was there, but you got to also play your part, because in this day and age, if I just show up with 7 million Twitter followers, 7 million YouTube followers, and 7 million Instagram followers, I can make $30 million. I can make a complete ass of myself and make big bucks. Bud Crawford, you're a legit boxing icon in the sport. Just start making yourself a little bit more out there, and you can do it too. But don't blame Bob Arum, who works with Muhammad Ali and all these others, you know, Hall of Famers. Don't put it on him now. It looks dumb.
I'm gonna lead with something extra petty though, and then I'm gonna raise a good point. The way Errol Spence got the fuck up and left when he put Porter on the deck, I think Errol Spence, if he got any inclination that that Terence Crawford was in Texas airspace, he would probably leave the country. You know what I'm saying? Based off the look on his face when he was in the stands when he fought Porter. But no, I'm gonna raise a serious point though. All right, you keep bringing up how many, you know, all these great black fighters that Bob Arum has promoted, and you know I can't dispute you on that because that's all facts, bro. But I'll say this: I'll point out one of them. Marvin Marvelous Hagler, or Marvelous Hagler. That dude had no personality. That dude was a bald-headed blob of a person to talk to, but he was just as fiery and just as mean and just as vicious, you know, as far and bloodthirsty as Terence Crawford is in that ring. And Bob Arum promoted the fuck out of that dude. So I'm saying, you know, so if it's all, you know, if we're gonna keep reframing it in the personality that, I mean, in the conversation that Crawford has no personality, well, shit, you know what I'm saying, and letting Arum off the hook for that, well, we got to consider that, you know, Marvelous Marvin Hagler, he wasn't really a pleasant person to engage with or talk to, and, you know, and he was famous for not showing up to pressers. He was famous for cussing out reporters. He was famous for turning his back to the camera or whatnot. But Bob Arum still fucking made he let a lot of fucking money off Marvelous Marvin Hagler's back. So it's like, it's like, is that really is Bud Crawford's lack of a personality? Is that really? Are we really gonna let Bob Arum off the hook based on, you know what I'm saying, on that? You know what I'm saying, when we've seen what he can do with people who have dry ass personalities? I mean, I don't know. I see your point. You're making a great point, and you got a steady argument that can make this discussion very circular. But you know what I'm saying, I'm not even being like, oh, you can have the last word or whatever. After, you know what I'm saying, beyond saying that, I'm gonna let you answer. I honestly ain't got nothing else for you. But I mean, at least I guess what I'm asking is answer that question for me, and I'll shut the fuck up.
Hey, I could right now that it's time. You could say it's nighttime. I'll argue till the sun comes up and it's fucking daytime, and I am right. That's just how I get down. But what I'm saying is, you brought up the Hagler part, which is a great point, because yes, he's watching paint dry when it comes to personality. But at the end of the day, he got in the ring with other Hall of Famers and then put himself on the map because of his boxing style. Hey, I might not have to talk a lot, but at the end of the day, I got in with my Spence. I got in with my Porter. I got in with my Danny Garcia. Bud hasn't done that. And if you look at Bud's last three opponents, they're all guys that should be retired. You brought up the point where, and I get it, it's a funny talking point and I like it, but the most people don't know Spence was reacting to the towel being thrown in, not because he got put down. So that's where Spence was like, you know, that didn't even look good because you could tell Sean could still fight. It wasn't like he was out on his feet. But what I'm saying is, just to end that point, yeah, you could be drywall, but at the end of the day, if you're getting in, then you'll make your star rise by getting in with a Duran or a Hagler or anybody else, a Sugar Ray, whatever. If you're boring, but then you get in those fights, your star rises automatically. Isaac Pitbull Cruz, last minute replacement, put on a great effort, and now look, his stars on the rise. He don't even speak English, but now Mexicans will jump on that and be like, we want to see him fight. You can promote that, but if you're not in the ring and you're sitting on your hands and you don't want to enter no pressers, or you're not on the top rank video chats, you're not helping yourself out, and that's just tough. So, you know, like I said, I like to debate boxing either way. I could be on your side as to why Bob Arum could lose the thing, just because I like to debate like that. But on this particular topic, the facts just don't align too well with Bud Crawford. I think his best thing to do is put all his energy into fighting maybe a Virgil Ortiz or pulling a Floyd Mayweather, where it says, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take on a Boots. A Boots Ennis. I'm going to take on a Virgil Ortiz while they're still wet behind the ears, and I'm going to cement my legacy more. Floyd knew what he was doing when he took on Canelo. They tried to get Canelo when he was 19, so they knew what he was going to be. Floyd says, let me get him. Let me put his head on my resume and cement Floyd Mayweather's legacy more. I think Bud Crawford would be more wise to get these young lions, even a Conor Benn, some of these younger guys, where you can say, I beat Conor Benn, the guy that became a megastar Hall of Famer. I beat Virgil Ortiz before he fought Aegis Kovalevsky, even though I told him to fight him, and he did it in the same fashion I did. I beat a Boots Ennis. You take down those three, I'm buying your merchandise tomorrow. But you're not. You don't want to fight the old or the new, but you're steady saying I should be paid the same or the highest in the room, and you can't do that. So, you know, like you said, agree to disagree. I love it all. I respect all your talking points, Courtney. It's not anything like a personal, but like just debating red corner versus blue corner all day, every day.
Great stuff. Oh.
All right, I'm gonna say this one last thing, and I'm gonna give the mic back because I know we're pressed on time. Terence Crawford's in a little bit of a different. I'm gonna keep Floyd. As far as Floyd, though, he can't exactly do what Floyd did to Canelo, because this is the thing. He fought Canelo when he himself was way past his prime. The thing is, if you put him in with if you put Terence Bud Crawford in with a Virgil Ortiz or a Conor Benn right now, he ruins them. You know what I'm saying? They leave, they take that loss and they leave a little, and possibly even Boots Ennis. He beats them in a fashion where they're probably going to leave a little bit of themselves in that ring and not be the same. And then from the rest of their careers, the caveat of, well, damn, they went in with Terence Bud Crawford kind of early. What happens if they didn't like meet up with him at that point? You know what I'm saying? What could have been done, as opposed to where Floyd beat up on Canelo and Floyd didn't have no legs left. He didn't have no pop. So, you know what I'm saying? Basically, you know what I'm saying? It's easier for Canelo to define Floyd by having the, you know what I'm saying, the career that he's had, because he didn't really take any career-altering damage. With Conor Benn, with Jerron Boots Ennis, with the Virgil Ortiz, that's very possible if they go in with this version of Terence Bud Crawford. You know, does that for sure 100% happen? No. But I mean, if we look at the fashion in which Terence Crawford has put down opponents, I mean, shit, look what he did to Jose Benavidez. Granted, Jose Benavidez went in there with like basically half a leg, but but you know what I'm saying. And a lot of times too, it's not the physical damage; it's that confidence. That's confidence that's gone. And that's if anything, Jose Benavidez did have that going in, and then we've seen what became of him after that. So I mean, that's the risk you run. And that's where I think that's where Crawford is kind of in a rock between a hard place. But I think his best course of action is just going ahead and signing his life away to Al Heyman, because that's where the welterweights are, man. And so I mean, if he's on PBC, the argument that can't be made is that there was that barrier. It's what I'm saying, if he goes on PBC and he doesn't secure these fights, we pretty much know what it is after that. So I think Terence Crawford needs to go at he needs to forget about Bob Arum on social media and the cameras, otherwise with all the the slick talk, and in the courtroom as well, and just go ahead and do what he has, because the thing is, he's in his 30s and he's approaching his mid 30s now. You know what I'm saying? Hey, we saw last night, what goes up inevitably comes down. So you know.
The last thing though, that barrier, it's been a disproven talking point though, because again we have Caleb Plant and Jose Benavidez and Benavidez that are on the same side, but that fight's never happened. So it's kind of tough to say the barriers there when.
And that's why if those fights don't happen, we know what it is.
Yeah, and so I agree with you on that. Yes.
Great stuff. Great stuff. One last thought of mine that I want to add, and Stephen, you asked what my opinion was of Bob Arum as with all the racist stuff. Of course, obviously, I don't think Bob Arum is a racist. It's well documented how the contributions he's made as far as promoting the black fighters throughout history, dating back to the '60s. However, Courtney made a very good point earlier in this segment about how about Bob Arum's how he discovered Terence Crawford. If Bob Arum, and I want to reemphasize, and I agree with it wholeheartedly, had Bob Arum noticed the things and the same things that Bradley saw in Crawford first, I think Bob Arum, he would have refined his approach in promoting Crawford. The demographics he comes from, that wouldn't be an issue. He would market to that demographic and more. Had Bob Arum discovered Terence Crawford on genuine terms, if had he saw the diamond in the rough in him, as opposed to him knowing about him just by word of mouth from Tim Bradley. So that's that. Tommy, before we go into the last segment, any lasting thoughts you have as far as the unfortunate friction, the leftover friction between Terence Crawford and Bob Arum, Top Rank?
No, not really. As far as that, you know, I'm gonna dig in the crate a little bit as far as this discussion
Go ahead,
on
man.
some of
Go
the
ahead.
back and forth. But the one thing I will say is when Stephen was talking about basically kind of comparing the Errol Spence and Terence Crawford with the Mikey Garcia. If he were to fight Mikey Garcia, I think that there were a couple of different things that I experienced or see in what came about from that fight with Mikey Garcia and Errol Spence. One, being at that fight and being at a lot of the things that were going on with that one, that crowd was heavy Mikey Garcia. So a lot of those numbers I genuinely feel were between not in a disrespect to Errol Spence, because he was absolutely climbing, but I feel that there were a lot of the Latin fans, the Latino fans, supporting Mikey Garcia strongly, on top of the fact that it was here in DFW with Errol Spence backed by Jerry Jones. And I think that's a huge thing when it comes to, as he even said to his point when we were talking about Bob Arum, the money, right? And the marketability, that he gets with that backing of having Jerry Jones, having him, decked out when he was at the Star in the Dallas gear, and Jerry Jones getting out there and really mingling with all of that stuff. I think that those are some different advantages that wouldn't be seen obviously with the Terence Bud Crawford. But other than that, man, no, I don't have anything else in terms of this. And love the exchange back and forth and all of that, man. The war of words, as we will.
Awesome stuff. Awesome stuff. Now to the last segment of the show. We got the preview of upcoming fights this spring of this year, 2022. Um, these are just some. I highlighted what I've known so far. So most of are confirmed. One in particular is in talks. I'll just briefly go through them. You got Keith Thurman versus Mario Barrios, February 5th. The rematch between Jamel Charlo and Brian Castano, February 26th. You got part 3 between Francisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez. And by verbal agreement so far, Shakur Stevenson and Oscar Valdez, April 30th. And this one's been brewing. It's in talks. Nothing confirmed yet. The mega fight between Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. The fight I'm most looking forward to is the one that's still in talks. Is the Katie Taylor versus Amanda Serrano. I've been thirsting for that fight for a while. But let me go to you, Tommy. Of these fights, or even fights that I have not even mentioned on this graphic, what fights are you looking forward to the most this upcoming spring?
Hey man, so I agree with you. I'm all for this Katie Taylor and Amanda Serrano fight. I think that this is gonna be extremely exciting, and it's gonna do wonderful things as we have continued to see a lot of wonderful things happening with women's boxing and boxing overall. To be honest, so I'm very excited for that one. Other than that, my next or additional one that I would mention is that trilogy. Juan Francisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez Chocolatito. I'm dead set on enjoying that one. That's one of those fights where I may be in the fight thread, but I'm not really scoring. I'm enjoying it. I'm taking it in. I'm gonna watch that one 2 or 3 times in 24 hours. Like I know that is going to be something that's going to be phenomenal, as each fight has been. So I feel like the boxing fans, the casuals, anybody that gets the opportunity to catch that fight is going to be in for an absolute treat, as we have seen with the previous fight. So those two are the main fights that I'm super super excited about, and then also just that the continued rise of Shakur Stevenson. I think that's going to be a really really good matchup. So I look forward to seeing that one as well. But I think he's going to do some good work there.
Great stuff. Great stuff. Courtney, uh, give us what you're most looking forward to this spring. Oh, unmute.
Unmute.
Unmute, Courtney.
All right, I'm gonna go down the list, and I'm gonna just give you a brief hit on all these fights. All right, I think Keith Thurman and Mario Barrios, that's gonna be better than we're expecting. With Charlo and Castano too, the rematch, I think that's not gonna be as intriguing as one would think. I think with 4 belts, it's gonna have a lot of eyes on it and a lot of anticipation, because we're gonna see PBC's first undisputed champion potentially. But I think Castano, I think he blew his wad in that first fight, and I'm looking for Jamel Charlo to basically just do a mop up operation in the rematch. With a El Gallo and Chocolatito, you already know what it is. That doesn't need to be spoken on. Shakur Stevenson and Oscar Valdez. Hey, everybody likes the unification. young hungry lions, undefeated. A lot of talk around both of them. I think Stevenson's does a job on him pretty thoroughly though. I think with how Valdez looked in that last out and that cloud over his head for the PEDs, I don't think he's going to be at his best, and I think he's going to be in a real vulnerable place. And Shakur Stevenson is going to, um, and then lastly, with Kaylee Taylor, Amanda Serrano, I think that's the most intriguing out of all of them as far as the run up and the story. You got Katie Taylor, who has been, the standard bearer and the golden girl of, of women's boxing, just because of that built-in fan base she's had across the aisle and the, pretty much the limitless promotional, muscle that Eddie Hearn has put behind her in building up women's boxing on his end. Against a person who has had basically in Amanda Serrano, who's basically had to scrap and scrape and has gotten relatively no recognition for her contributions to the sport. I think that's one of the best storylines that we can have going in for a women's boxing match and matchup of this magnitude. So I think we got, with all these listed, I think we got some goodies, man. And then, outside of this list, I'm really looking forward to see the direction that Josh Taylor is going to go in. I'm looking to see, where Teofimo Lopez, where he fits in his comeback. And then, with Cambosos down in Australia, I'm eager to see who's going to go down there and accept that challenge. Is it going to be Devin Haney? Are we finally going to answer the question at 135, or Devin Haney's going to go down there and unify? Or is it going to be Lomachenko who swoops in and basically disrupts the apple cart, but not only disrupts it, but basically retakes what was taken from him in ceremonious fashion. So some good fights ahead of us in 2022, and we'll see if they actually fight them.
Definitely all goodies. Great rundown, Corny. Stefan, what fights are you looking forward to this spring? Go ahead, man.
Okay, just naturally because Courtney went from top to bottom, I'll go bottom to top. No, I like what he said on all those. It was a great analysis. I do like Amanda Serrano in the fight coming up. I'm a little bit, well, Katie Taylor's tremendous. I am glad that there are more ladies outside of Clarissa Shields that are starting to get more interested in boxing. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for women's boxing when you can have more ladies that are in there that are more evenly matched versus just having one lady that's out there smoking everybody, knockout after knockout after knockout. It doesn't really help the sport. But I think when you have evenly matched ladies that you can get trilogies like that Juan Frisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez, that helps women's sports more than just putting up your star versus a tomato can. She smokes her and then the next. So I think it's good. I like Amanda Serrano in that one just because there's been 2 Katie Taylor fights that I've watched and I thought she could have lost. So, you could see it however you like. She got the decision on those 2 different ones, but it's nevertheless, those are 2 great, evenly matched ladies that are going in it, and all respect to them anytime you're going inside the ring. Shakur Steven and Oscar Valdez. I like that fight. I'm a big fan of Shakur and Oscar. I became a huge Oscar fan whenever he fought with a broken jaw and still pulled it out. When you can show you have that dog in you, and especially as a Mexican boxer, oh man, it does tremendous things for your star to rise. I think Shakur Steven is naturally the more gifted fighter. However, when Shakur Stevenson fought the guy from that African guy from Africa, he didn't open up as much because he said it himself. I knew he hit hard, and I didn't want to go out there and open up too much. I think Shakur Stevenson wins this fight, but I see him letting Oscar Valdez score good, win some rounds because he respects him maybe too much. And Oscar Valdez, obviously the T and the PD thing, that's a dark cloud, like Courtney mentioned. However, you still do have Eddie Reynoso and you still do have Canelo that are in your camp that are going to be helping you out. And that's something that can't be dismissed. The next one, Juan Frisco Estrada and Roman Gonzalez. I was there for that last fight, and that was fireworks. I thought Roman Gonzalez won. I think they gave it to Juan Frisco Estrada to set up this trilogy. But nevertheless, you can't. I could hear him both sides, and I wouldn't be mad at you either way. So that'll be a great fight. I think that one might be postponed because Francisco Estrada had COVID symptoms and he hasn't been able to train like he should. So I think got pushed back a little bit from the March 5th date. I was a little sad because that was my birthday, so that's the only reason I know that. Charlo and Castano, that's going to be another great fight. Obviously, we'll see who the better fighter is because rematches favor the better fighter. So if Jermell Charlo goes out there and just totally smokes Castano, like Courtney said, then we know that Charlo was the better fighter, just had a rough night in the office, and we all have those. Everybody goes to work, and sometimes that Monday wasn't your best Monday. But again, Castano could show up and say, nope, that was the real deal. I gave you it the first time. I can make it an interesting fight the second time. So that's a good one. I'm a little disappointed, or not disappointed, but I don't see how Keith Thurman and Mario Barrios is happening before Virgil Ortiz when he's at the WBC ranked #1 contender spot. And that's for, I think, like a title eliminator, which is kind of intriguing when Keith Thurman hasn't fought in forever. He hasn't been one time in forever. And Mario Barrios is coming off that Tank Davis fight. He had some bright spots, but it's still a loss at the end of the day. So I don't see how that one's going to be that for that title eliminator. But it's another good one where it's a tale as old as time. Is the guard going to change, or does the veteran have a little bit more? And Keith Thurman, is he going to show he's got some left, or is he going to just show up and maybe it's a last payday? So they're all interesting fights. As a boxing fan, when you can look, especially from where we've come with COVID, and you just can go down the list and start to see these dates fill up, it's exciting.
Definitely.
I'm excited. So, like Courtney mentioned, even other ones. You have Ryan Garcia doing whatever he's doing, maybe coming back out and who was it? Who did they have him mention to fight? Tevin Farmer. That he might fight Tevin Farmer, and I like him. He's real technical. He's very slick, and when he comes up or when he shows up with his best, he's a real solid fighter. Gave Jojo Diaz some fits too. So you got a lot of good stuff coming up.
Great stuff all around. Well, guys, that's going to be it for episode 77 of the Standing 8 podcast. Thank you again, Mr. Stephen Ruiz from Ringside Global. Be sure to follow his page. Mr. Ruiz, any lasting thoughts, shout outs you want to give out?
Again, just happy birthday to Derek James. Anytime you're locally here and you're doing positive things he does a lot of great stuff for the Boys and Girls Club out here in the DFW. And anytime you're doing stuff for minority communities, any community, it doesn't even matter. When you're doing positive stuff in this day and age, I'm all for it. A shout out to you guys for having me on. I love the boxing discussion where you can disagree but still be respectful. So, and I tip to Mr. Courtney Tanner. Anybody, it's all love. I just feel like with as much stuff that's out there, you got to give out positive vibes so you can get that stuff back. So at the end of the day, I just love talking boxing. It's a great avenue to just connect with different people that you never get to talk with. All walks of life. So shout out to Derek James. Shout out to one of my good friends, Jimmy Blue out there, who's always talking boxing with me at All Access Elite. Everybody out there that supports you guys, keep doing it. I know Courtney Tanner is going to run down the list of all across the United States, the world, Samoa, Philippines. He does it all. So shout out to you guys. Like I said, just love it. I hope everybody stays healthy throughout this year because, man, it's tough out there. So that whatever you can do to keep yourself, your family safe, I'm all for it.
Beautiful words. And again, thank you, Mr. Stephen Ruiz, for joining us. Always an honor to have you on, and hopefully more episodes in the near future. Next up, Tommy Russ Jr. Be sure to, if you're in the Dallas area, Fort Worth, you want some good-ass barbecue delivered your way, hit him up at BSHQ BBQ. You could hit him up, contact them directly at 801-360-2737. 2214. Mr. Tommy Rush Jr., any lasting shout outs you want to give out? Go ahead, man.
Hey, so first, spoiler alert. As Stephen mentioned, shout out to Jimmy Blue, Mister. All access elite. We are looking to have him on with us in the near future as well. So absolutely look forward to that. Love, all of everybody that's out here grinding and doing their thing. In the boxing world. Shout out to In Vivo, shout out to all of them. We love them guys as well. Most definitely appreciate Stephen and Ringside Global, getting on here with us and enjoying it and having great fun on this. I want to give a shout out to my little sister. Today is her birthday, so shout out to Leanne Daniels. Happy birthday! Love you, little sis. Just hey, you guys, man, as always, Aaron, everything that you do, for all of us, for the website, for this program, for the podcast, all of it, man. Appreciate everything that you are always doing. Always, Courtney, long time, how we get down, man. So shout out to MG Michael Gomes, man. We miss you, bro. We absolutely gonna have him back on. Shout out to one of the OGs, Daniel Pena, D Rock. You know what it is there, man. He was just out there in Madison Square Garden. I think I want to say he airballed that free throw. He was on the court. So I gave him some shit for that, but hey, he said, "Hey, I was on the court. That's all that matters." So what I'm saying, shout out to him and just all of the listeners, all the supporters, anybody that chimes in, on our episodes and is just engaging with us. Shout out to the whole Pound for Pound, all of our boxing group, and we'd love to have even more members join us and get in there and mix it up. So. Just shout out to everybody, man. Appreciate y'all. Shout out to my family, all of the kids, my girlfriend Kendra. Shout out all day. Everybody stay safe.
Great stuff, Tommy. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Courtney Tanner, aka the Burt Brown Sugar. As usual, races again with the Oscar closing speech. The curtain opens.
Hey,
What's up, Courtney?
you already know how this is gonna go, man. But not really. In all seriousness, I just want to thank you, Aaron and Tommy, for loving my ass so much. Even though I'm not easy to love, but hey, man, I love that you guys just basically let me be me, man, and rock it. Just have the confidence in me that I'm not gonna do anything too stank on the air or lose us too many listeners. Hey, Steven, hey. Complete honor, man. Honor. You could have been anywhere else on your Sunday night, man. We know you got a beautiful family at home to tend to, but you came on and rocked it with us, man. We love you for that. We love having you, man. We hope you come back on soon, man, with your hating ass. Now, want to give a shout out to the First Lady of Boxing, Tiffany Daniels. Want to give a shout out to Gary Kittleson. Want to give a shout out to Hector Franco and Joshua Correa at Front Proof. Want to give a shout out to Anthony Stack Saldana. Want to give a shout out to Sean Fitzgerald, Sean Hicks at Just Boxing. Want to give a shout out to Michael Gomes. I know a lot of you have questions or are wondering where the hell dude is, but his life is in a completely different direction with him, doing some big things in the real estate industry up in Jersey, and we fully support him, and this is his home whenever he wants to come back home to it, yo. Also to D Rock doing big things on the humanitarian tip down there in Guatemala, showing the human hand of what we do here on the Standing 8 podcast, and just demonstrating that we're not all assholes, and that we are some of us are decent human beings. Shout out to him, and we love him and we pray for his safety down there. Want to give a shout out to Nick Agarame, Antoine Wilkes, Roy Bennett, Chris Ramos, Julio Z's hating ass, Michael Cockrell, and just basically everybody from the Pound for Pound group. And as always, we want to extend a special shout out to our international audience, everybody who is rocking with us up in Canada, down in Mexico, all over Latin America, across the channel in England, everybody in Ireland. Shout out to South Africa, Ghana, Nigeria, Tanzania, and then the South Pacific. What I'm saying, kicking it with rocking real hard with us. Everybody in Australia, everybody down in New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Samoa, Tonga, and everybody in the Philippines, South Korea, Japan, in Germany. We love y'all too. Hey, thank you so much for coming along for this ride, for this movement. We promise you we are going to continue to bring you great and exclusive content on into 2022. Hey, it's time to be a part of this, man. If you're not here already, hey, bring your mama, your daddy, your brother, your sister, your cousin, your uncle, your auntie, your next door neighbor, your baby mama, your significant other. Hey, bring them all, and then bring somebody else. Let's do this. Hey, Neon Sign, we open.
Oh, your neon sign. Oh, and the other neon sign. Whataburger is better than In and Out. Oh shit.
It's all lies. It's all lies. Hey, to everybody in our international audience who has that American dream of getting over here and getting a taste of that, man. Hey, both places are good, but hey, Whataburger is not superior. It's all lies, bro. It's all lies. Kendra, I know you watching somewhere. Gonna catch this on replay. Hey, you a damn lie. Hey, we family. I love you. You know what I'm saying? We got Tommy in common, so we got to get along for him. But hey, I'll never forgive you. X'd out.
Last day, I want to give a personal shout out. I already know this, but I want to say it again. Happy belated birthday to my brother, Constantine Sorial. Shout out to my bro. And also across the pond, I want to send a special congratulations to our longtime friend Manuel Guevara on his recent marriage. Daniel Pena was out there as well for that same purpose. So shout out and congratulations. And again, thank you, Mr. Stevenson Ruiz, for joining us. Tom, my usual compadres, Tommy Ruiz Jr., Courtney Tanner. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to have you on. Michael Gomes, congratulations on all your successes so far. More to come. Can't wait to get you back on. And all the listeners, longtime supporters, always thankful. And everyone out there, be safe out there. Till next time, guys. Episode 77 in the books. Peace, guys.